So in the real world, we can take certain scenarios and turn them into equations. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. So look at example 1. It says Mark scored 17 points for the home team in a basketball game. His teammates as a group scored P points. His team score was 45 points. Okay, so things that we know. We know the whole team's score. That's our total. We know how much Mark scored just by himself. And then we know that the teammates, the rest of them, scored P points. Now remember, P here is a variable. It's representing an amount that we just don't know yet. Now we could figure that out, but we don't know it yet. So we're going to look at a few things here. We're going to look at Mark's points. We're going to look at the rest of the teammates' points. And then we're going to look at the total score. So to turn this into an equation, we have the 17 points that Mark scored. We have the P points that the rest of the teammates scored. And then we have the total score of 45 points. So our equal sign for our equation is going to go right there because we know that the total is 45. It equals 45 all together. So if you think of what you would have to do with Mark's points and his teammates' points to find the total, you're going to have to add them together. What he scored plus what the rest of them scored equals that total of 45. What sometimes confuses people is instead of wanting to write the equation and think of what they need to do for that, they want to think of how to find out what the teammates scored. So most of you should recognize from elementary school, this is like an elementary school word problem. If they said, how many points did the rest of the team score? Y'all would know that we would take that total of 45 and we would subtract the 17 that Mark scored, and that's going to give us the rest that the rest of the team scored. So some people want to pick an equation that has subtraction in it. But the reason this is not a subtraction equation is two things. Remember, if we want to figure out the total score, we would put Mark's points and his teammates' points together. We would add them together. And the other thing is that subtraction would come in when we went to solve this equation. So if you think about what we've learned about solving, when we want to get P by itself, we would subtract 17 over here because 17 minus 17 would be 0. That would go away. We would do that on the other side too. And that's how we would figure out what P equals. So you do subtract to solve the equation, but our goal here is not to solve the equation. Now, if you want to solve it and figure out what 45 minus 17 is, then if you add 17 plus that number, it should give you 45. So knowing what the teammates scored is helpful. Just make sure that you're picking the correct equation. Okay, so example 2. 72 people signed up for the soccer league. After the players were evenly divided into teams, there were 6 teams in the league and X people on each team. Okay, so again, we hear the word divided in this problem. It makes people want to pick a division equation, but follow along with me and you're going to see this is not going to be a division equation. So first thing I want you to do is circle this number 72. You know that our brains do not like numbers that are written in word form, so let's turn that into a regular number. So that's how many people signed up total. And then we know that the players were evenly divided into teams, okay? And then there were 6 teams, so we know how many teams. We don't know how many people on each team. That's what we would be solving for if we solved for X. Okay, so over here, let's look at our number of teams. Let's look at the number of players on each team. And then let's look at the total people in the league. Those are the 3 things we're dealing with here. They told us in the problem that there were going to be 6 teams, so I'm going to put that there. And then the players on each team, we don't know that. We're referring to that right now as X. And then we do know that there were 72 people in the whole team. And again, because that's our total, our equal sign is going to go there because whatever we're doing, it's going to be equal to that total. So again, people see evenly divided and they think that they should pick a division equation, but what we're going to want to do is multiply the number of teams times the number of players on each team. That's going to give us the total number of people in the league. So 6 times x equals 72. If you were to work this out, you'd figure out that there are 12 people on each team, and 6 times 12 would give you 72. Now, again, where does that division come in? Well, if we see multiplication in our equation, to solve that, we would be using division because we always use our opposite operation. So that's where the division comes in, is that, yes, we would divide both sides by 6 because that would make this 6 go away. And 72 divided by 6 is what gives us that 12. So don't try to skip ahead and pick division because that's how you would solve it. We're trying to get our original equation, not how we would solve the equation. Again, knowing that there are 12 people on each team was helpful for us. So that is good information, just not the operation that's going to be in the equation. Okay, example 3 says Benjamin is B years old. His sister Rebecca is 3 years younger than Benjamin. And we know Rebecca is 12 years old. Okay, so Benjamin, we don't know his age yet, but we're going to call that B. We know his sister's 3 years younger, and we know that she is 12. Again, we don't want that number there. That's for Rebecca. We want a real number, not a word number. And then I also see this one. Let's go ahead and write a 3 here. Okay, so we've got Benjamin's age. We're going to call that B for right now. We've got the age difference between them. That's going to be 3 years. And then we've got Rebecca's age. And she's 12. So some people get confused here. They see younger, so they think subtraction, and they see 12 and 3, and they think that they need to subtract 12 minus 3, and they get 9. But here's the thing about Benjamin. Benjamin is older. It says Rebecca is younger, so he needs to be older than her. That would make him 15. But we are going to use subtraction here because his age, which we know is 15, we're calling it B, but I was able to figure out that's going to be 15, minus the 3-year age difference gives us her age. So this would be a subtraction equation. Just be careful because they could give you one that said 12 minus 3 equals B. Well, 12 minus 3 is 9. And again, his age is not 9. So try to figure out what the variable equals and make sure that whatever that would be, you could plug in here and make it work. Because 15 minus 3 is 12, so that does work. Okay, and we've got one more example. It says, in the school band, there are 5 trumpet players and F flute players. There are half as many trumpet players as there are flute players. Okay, so this one is the hardest one, but just follow along with me. I think you'll be just fine. So we know how many trumpet players there are. We don't know how many flute players. We're going to call that F for right now. But we do know that there are half as many trumpet players as there are flute players. So there's more flute players than trumpet players. So let's look at our different things that we're looking at here. Number of flute players. And remember that we don't have a number for that right now, so we're calling that F. And then we have, I'm going to come back to that middle one. The middle one's a little bit more confusing. So let's go over to the right. This is the number of trumpet players. And we do know that there's 5 of them. Okay, so there's half as many trumpet players. So that means that the flute players cut in half would give us the trumpet players. And so if we're cutting something in half, that means we're dividing it by 2. And we're going to call this the relationship between them. The relationship here is that there's half as many, and so we would divide by 2. Typically, remember, we're not going to see our equations with that sort of division symbol. So if you'll just write down here, or f over 2 equals 5, because remember that fraction notation does mean division. That's more likely the way you would see it. So f divided by 2 equals 5. So if you have figured this out already, there's got to be 10 flute players. There's half as many trumpet players, and that's 5. That makes sense, right? You wouldn't want to pick something where f turns out to be a different number other than 10. Like maybe you accidentally divided 5 divided by 2. Well, that would be 2.5. We know that doesn't even make sense, because how can there be half of a flute player? And again, we also know the flute players are supposed to be more, because there's half as many trumpet players. That's less than the flute players. So F does have to be 10 there. Okay, so go ahead and see if this helps you complete your assignment for today.